Good morning. I heard about a radio announcer who told of a man who went through the drive-thru at KFC, and he ordered about $6 worth of food. And when he pulled up to give his money to the cashier, he handed her a $200 bill. It had President George Bush's picture on the front, and on the back was a picture of a vegetable with the words declaring, "I hate broccoli." She took the bill and gave him his food and the exact change for the bill that he gave her. And he drove away, and apparently he was never seen again after that. For the record, I'm sure all of you grasp that there's no such thing as a $200 bill that is legitimate currency, and it definitely does not have a picture of George Bush or broccoli on it. But by contrast, if I had a $20 bill, hypothetically, because I don't have one, if I had a $20 bill, who would want the $20 bill? I mean, it wouldn't hurt, would it? Let's say I were to crumple up the $20 bill. Would you still want it? Would it change? Maybe that could help. Would you change your will to have the $20 bill? What if I took the crumpled up ball and I threw it on the floor and I stomped on it? Would you still want it? Would it be useful to you? Most of you would be willing to have the $20 bill no matter the condition that the $20 bill is in, because you know that the value does not change pretty much based upon its condition unless you rip the whole thing up. It doesn't matter what it looks like, whether it's a crisp, $20 bill, brand new, fresh off the press, or whether it's from, 1980 something. Years ago, Lawrence J. Peter visited several corporations and studied some of their management characteristics. As a result, he came up with a maxim he called the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle roughly said, a person is hired by a company and does a good job. Somebody notices the competence of this person, and this person is promoted to a higher level of responsibility. They do a good job there as well, and they are elevated yet again another notch in the corporation. And this happens again and again through their time at this company. But eventually, the individual is promoted to a position that they cannot handle. They are promoted to a point where they're incompetent at this position. And once they reach that level of incompetence, they are no longer useful to the company. So they no longer have value and they're let go. The world evaluates people based off of this kind of Peter Principle that this man talked about. People are regarded as valuable based upon things such as good looks, intelligence, personality, wealth, competence, capability, and so on. But sooner or later, people reach a point in their lives when they are no longer useful by those standards. By contrast, when it comes to the value of people, God has a different attitude than the world does. God looks less at what the world considers as valuable, but looks instead on what he knows lies within a person, their inner worth. A philosopher named Hazlitt once observed Dutch housewives who were wrapping their household belongings in pieces wives were doing. He realized that they were actually wrapping their goods in paintings by the Dutch artist Rembrandt. Yeah, these women saw a value in the canvas that, based upon its usefulness to them, the practicality of the canvas being able to wrap their belongings. But they missed the canvas's true worth because they didn't understand the inner value of a Rembrandt painting. God told the prophet Samuel, "The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. The world focuses on outward things, what you're good at, how attractive you are, who you know. God focuses on the heart, the potential that lies within. That brings us to our text, John 1, 40 through 42. And this is where we're introduced to a man named Simon. It says, one of the two who heard John speak and followed Jesus was Andrew, Simon Peter's brother. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which means Christ. He brought Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, "You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas," which means Peter. Now, I want you to see Simon the way the world probably saw Simon. He was useful. This was a man who was a skilled fisherman. He knew boats, he knew nets, he knew the sea, he knew how to fish. He was a man's man, confident, likable, outspoken, highly gifted to the community. But now, here's Andrew bringing his brother Simon to Jesus. It doesn't say that Andrew gets the chance to tell Jesus who his brother is, but then the first words that were uttered by Jesus were, "You're Simon. It's who you are. I know you're a skilled fisherman, a man's man, a leader among your peers." But then Jesus says, "No, you're going to be called Cephas." Jesus not only knew who Simon was, Jesus also knew who Simon could be. And Jesus gave Simon a new name that reflected what Jesus saw as Peter's inner quality. It's intriguing. Whenever God wants to do something special, they stop being valuable. They become the fulfillment of the Peter principle we talked about earlier. Just throw them to the side. They're not useful anymore. They're worthless. Had you been watching Peter during this time with Jesus, he would have been the embodiment of this Peter principle. One man once observed, Peter was a failure in ways that we most dread. He was impotent in a crisis and socially inept. At the arrest of Jesus, he collapsed, a hapless, blustering coward. And in the most critical situations of his life with Jesus, following his confession that Jesus was the Son of God on the road to Caesarea Philippi, and the vision he saw of Jesus with Moses and Elijah on the Mount of Transfiguration, Peter ended up saying the most embarrassingly inappropriate things. He was not the companion we would want with us in times of danger, and he was not the kind of person we would feel comfortable with in social situations. Over again, Peter's failure. Peter was a rough, uncultured, uneducated man. He was a fisherman, and he often spoke and acted impulsively, and you couldn't always depend on him. When Jesus asked Peter, James, and John to join him in prayer at the Garden of Gethsemane before he was betrayed, what did Peter end up doing? He fell asleep. Not once, not twice, 3 times Peter fell asleep. Then, when Jesus was arrested, Peter had a chance to boldly declare Jesus as after he'd fallen asleep, after he denied Christ 3 times, and after he decided to go back fishing. We find Peter preaching one of the most powerful sermons in Christian history and convicting over 3,000 people to repent and be baptized for the forgiveness of their sins. Then we see Peter in temple courts after healing a lame man, proclaiming the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And as a result of that, he was arrested and he was brought before the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin's intention was to flog, imprison, and perhaps even execute Peter for his boldness. And yet Peter responds to them in essence, "Do what you will with me. We must obey God rather than man." Acts 5:29. That's quite a change, if you ask me. Something had apparently happened to Peter, but what? If I can discover what happened to Peter, what energized him, put a spark in him, what turned him loose, then if you and I could hold that same energy that he had, then we could literally turn the world upside down. One sermon, 3,000 people came forward. We can make a difference for God like we've never done before. Some people believe that what we need to do to accomplish that is more head knowledge. Just study the Bible more, attend church more regularly, start going to Sunday school, maybe even go to Bible college and learn more. Learn as much as you can, and maybe I'll change. Now, the Bible tells us that is very important. Do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a workman who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. That's 2 Timothy 2:15. We must not forsake knowledge. We must learn biblical knowledge. However, if anybody had head knowledge at this time, it was Peter. I know he was a fisherman before, but Peter spent 3 years at Jesus' feet. He was taught all the right things. His doctrine was pure for the most part, but Peter still denied Jesus. He still hid in a locked room, fearing arrest, and he still nearly gave up his faith and just went back to fishing for fish. Peter, the problem with Peter went deeper than what he knew or what he did not know. Peter's problem was that he had a character flaw. And it's a character flaw that many of us share. His flaw was this: when faced with a challenge, Peter always said things. This was a man's man, a leader amongst his friends, a decisive, bold man. Peter was a tough man. You didn't mess with this man. He cut off a man's ear. And he was one of those that if he couldn't do it, it couldn't be done. That was the kind of man that Peter was. But when Peter started walking with Jesus, his whole world turned around. When Peter saw Jesus walking on water, at the start, he had very bold, good intentions. But then he found himself out on the water, feeling the wind in his face and the water wrapping around his ankles. And he said to himself, I can't do this. And he began to sink. He reached out his hand to Jesus and said, Lord, save me, which is a proper response. Later, when Jesus said he was going to be betrayed, arrested, and crucified, Peter thought to himself, I can stop this. But then Peter found himself alone by a fire later that day. Jesus was not far away, and he was under arrest and being subjugated to unknown punishments and possible death. Peter had an opportunity to did not have an opportunity to make any difference by admitting he was Jesus' disciple. And he found himself in danger of being discovered, and he felt threatened with possible imprisonment and death. And he said to himself, I can't do this. The problem for Peter was his theology. His theology was, if I can't do it, it can't be done. And every time he faced trouble, he looked to his own abilities. He discovered that his theology wasn't going to work around Jesus. It hurt him, and it hurt him, and it hurt him some more. And the last straw was when he cowardly denied Jesus 3 times. It hurt so bad. Peter just couldn't face it anymore, and he thought it best to just walk away, to just escape. Escapism. We all do it. If something's too hard, we run away to what we know and what's comfortable. He ran back to the boat. The change in Peter happened when he stopped saying, I can do all things, and started saying, I can't do all things by myself, but I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Paul said that. You see, it's when Jesus was allowed to have his way with Peter that he reached full potential, that he lived up to his name. Someone has once noted, a football in my hands is worth about $19, but put the football in Peyton Manning's hand and it's worth about $33 million. Depends on whose hands it's in. A baseball in my hands is worth about $6, but you put that same baseball in Mike Trout's hands, or Yadier Molina's hands, we'll do that, and it's worth about $19 million. It depends on whose hands the ball is in. This racket is useless in my hands, but you put that same tennis racket in Roger Federer's hands and it's worth about 20 Grand Slam titles. It depends on whose hand it's in. Peter learned that he needed to place himself totally in Jesus' hands to be truly used. Peter learned that left to ourselves, we eventually fail and lose value. Peter did. We trust in our own abilities and our own accomplishments. But Jesus is not asking for us to be self-sufficient, and he never has. He's not asking for us to lean on our own understanding or to do everything for ourselves. He never said God helps who helps themselves. It is so much easier to live life knowing that I don't have to earn the gift that is most worth receiving in this life, which is my salvation. And all he asks of us is that we trust him through it all, and we trust him at his word, and we live according to that word. Let me pray for us, and we'll continue in worship today. God, thank you so much